Welcome to the second day of Summer School 2023, organized by Bhaktivedanta Institute on the theme Unfolding the Mystery of Memory. We are gathered here on this beautiful morning to learn about the mysterious thing called memory. I hope you all had a wonderful dinner last night and the breakfast was also delicious. Um, for your kind information, today we will be having a shorter session because we'll have a trip visit to Mayapur during the second half. So we would like to begin from here, and as a reminder to our respected speakers, the time allotted for your presentation would be 45 minutes, and 15 minutes would be allotted for question answer session. For our first speaker of today's session, we have with us Dr. Shrikant Chandragiri, Max Planck Institute, Germany, joining us online. Dr. Shrikant Chandragiri, currently working as a postdoctoral scientist at Max Planck Institute of Biology of Aging, Cologne, Germany. He obtained his doctorate degree in biology from Max Planck Institute for Biology of Aging in Cologne, Germany. His research mainly focused on mitochondrial protostatus in understanding spinocerebellar ataxia and cardiomyopathy diseases. He obtained a master's in genetics from Osmania University. After completing his master's degree, he carried out brief research in the notch signaling of T-cell development and survival at National Center for Biological Sciences, NCBS, Bangalore. He also worked at University of Freiburg, Switzerland, on the molecular mechanism of membrane contact sites, MCS formation, and its role in facilitating the transport of biomolecules between the organelles. He has been a recipient of CSIR, ICMR, and DBT Fellowship in India and Swiss National Science Foundation Fellowship in Switzerland. So without taking much time, I would like to welcome Dr. Shrikant Chandragiri. Thank you.
Okay. Shall I start?
Yes.
Am I audible? Is everything okay? Okay. Okay, thank you for everyone, especially to Bhaktivedanta Institute, organizing such a wonderful summer school. Bhaktivedanta Institute always brings some good themes to discuss. So, and also thanks for hosting this. Okay. And today I'm going to talk about what is thought. Of course, we always think there is no stop, it's a continuous process, but we never questioned or we never inquired what actually thought is and how these are formed or what is the source of thought. We try to address or try to find answers for these questions, and in this talk, let's go. So basically, thoughts always we say like comes from the mind in general terms, and in other words, in the science in cognitive neuroscience, we say it's a mind wandering. Means even without any stimuli, our we can have an activity of thinking process all the time, and it could be mental state or imagining or what is it inner space. It could be anything. And this thought process, like what we actually think, even it is very dynamic in nature. Means, for example, now you are actually try to focus on my talk. Even if I pause for 2 seconds or something, immediately your thoughts it can jump to could be anything, either your work or your personal life or sports, whatever it is. It is so dynamic nature. Even if a short fraction of second, thoughts can shift from one state of mind to another state of mind, or one thought to another. And it also continuous process. So means like we always have a uh, we never stop thinking, like passively, or unless you are in the deep sleep where mind doesn't work, means mind also not involved in it. So most of the time our thought thinking pattern is always, it's a continuous and it's in dynamic nature. So in just a moment, yeah. So what is the definition of thought in the neuroscience? Actually, in neuroscience, it's defined as like a if a spontaneous thought is a mental state, basically it's a mind or a mental state, and it arises relatively freely, and means without any stimuli. You don't trigger even within the mind. Like for example, it's when I say, okay, show the ice cream, then you can think about ice cream. But spontaneous thought, you don't have to show any object or you don't require any stimuli. Then naturally it goes without any constraints, this thing. So we say basically, and also it continuous and means one mind state to another state, it changes. Thoughts always changes and dynamical in nature. So the question is in the field, the main question, what is the main question is what actually a thought and how they are formed and what is the source of thought. So if you can understand this, you can solve this mental illness, and also you can understand one of the big scientific problem, brain and mind, and many other things. When we talk about thought, there are two things comes in the definition or a thought. One is cognitive. Cognitive means, in other terms, consciousness. Another one is mind state or mental state. In other words, mind. And consciousness and mind. And again, these are the two big questions in neuroscience or in life science. And many people are trying uh, last 2 decades or 3 decades trying to find answers how consciousness arising and or how it is formed will be able to explain consciousness through the brain and neurons or something. So let's dive it. So and the thought process, the thoughts actually, there are different types. It has so, for example, like you can categorize into different things based on that. Deliberate constraint means you. This is depends on your cognitive control. Means intentionally you are involved in. For example, when it is high, means very strong. It is goal-directed thought process. Means okay, today evening, I have to finish my research article, abstract or the results part, and so that thing. And what I have to do, I will always think in a such a way that okay, these are the things I need to done, and then I will. This is goal-oriented thinking. Means this thought has a full control of cognitive control of mind. And when it is the deliberate constraint is very less, that means your cognitive control is less, like that is kind of dreaming. In the dreaming state, you can dream many things, but it doesn't have your involvement, direct cognitive involvement. And mind wandering means like a resting phase when you are not doing anything. For example, if I stop this talk, one moment you are not doing any activity, still your mind always thinks something else. Uh, and creative thinking means sometimes like you try to think, sometimes all of a sudden something flashes and it helps in your project or whatever to solve any problem in your life. These all three called spontaneous thoughts, and they don't involve much cognitive control. Means your involvement in the thought direction much. It's compared to dreaming is way less compared to the mind wandering and creative thinking. And goal directed thinking is you are a strong involved in channelizing your thoughts to the particular task. Automatic constraints means so
Recording in
automatic
progress.
So automatic constraints means like this here the ability the your involvement in the thought process in simple words, like for example you about to sleep, but without your involvement all of a sudden you started thinking about the tomorrow task in the your workplace, about your manager and how to deal with tomorrow manager and this project and all those things. But though you don't want it, but it comes into the so the higher it is, then you will the higher automatic constraint. That means like you have less control over this thought process, and it keeps always in the loop mode, always thinking, and it will go on. In best example, if you say um, when you have, for example, in a best scenario in the day-to-day life, when you lost your loved ones, it could be a grandparents or a father or a mother, and though you don't want to think and you don't want to get upset or have a grief, but it always comes into the mind. Or it could be also positive thing, like when India won match against Pakistan, you will always think, wow, like in 12 balls, Virat Kohli scored maybe 40 runs or 30 runs. It's wonderful. In a whole day, you will always think about that event. Maybe it gives a pleasure to your happiness, but even if you try to stop it, but it's because of happiness itself. But and if it is very obsessive, if it is a continuous and strong, and if it is strong and continuous, that's it creates an obsessive thought. Obsessive thought is something I can say it's a mental illness. Purely, it's a mental illness. So this is where you can take the thoughts, and then we can see like how the spontaneous thought or goal-directed thoughts or obsessive thoughts or a mental illness things forms are addressing these things before what is the thought, like how this, what is the source of these thoughts, how they are forming. We'll try to dig into it. So then I told you, like when we say thought, it's always associated with consciousness and mind, and these are the two problems. So how we can actually map the brain cognitive functions? Mainly, we use FM. I don't want to go very deep into the neuroscience because the audience are from different disciplines, could be engineering, mathematics, physics. So I try to keep it as simple as I can so that everyone could follow it. So basically, we can map the brain function using fMRI. fMRI means magnetic resonance imaging. When you give a task to the person, if he sees the face of some person, then if he says yes, then you can see which are the region of the brain is active. And when he doesn't see the face and the visual stimuli is not there, then you do see the way the brain regions are active. Then you can actually see the contrast, and these are the research association for the recognizing the object and everything. In that way, you can map all the brain region for different two cognitive functions. For example, frontal lobe, responsible for emotion, decision making, and organization, and cerebellum for skill memory and movement coordination, etc. So that you can map everything. But these all studies based on the pure correlation. Okay, you show the object or you give the any stimuli, and certain brain region is getting active. But the question is, does this brain region, whichever active or these neuronal circuits, give rises this specific function, whatever memory or it could be emotion or feeling. So let's see, and how this also these all things you require a consciousness, these all emotions and feelings and everything, and does this neuron or brain does it gives rise consciousness or something. And second thing, Like, okay, let's see. So we had a discussion in the last 2 weeks back in the lab. One of my friend, a colleague, he said, after seeing this news in the Nature, this, in a simple term, I'll say, he's Christoph. He's a great scientist in the neuroscience. He is a director for Helen Institute of Brain Research in Seattle, in USA. Okay, he's a very great scientist in trying to find the consciousness. And Chalmers is another philosopher. They had a bet or a wager in the year of 1998. The bet was very simple. The Christoph said, "We will prove in 25 years how brain gives rise to consciousness, and we'll have an answer for that. We'll address the consciousness thing." And last June 23rd of this year, 25 years is over, and still we don't have any answer how consciousness is coming from, where consciousness is coming from. At least we don't have answer at this moment. But Christoph accepted that he couldn't. Of course, all neuroscientists, like not all neuroscientists, but he at least accepted as a leading scientist in the field that we couldn't solve the consciousness problem, or at least brain does not keep right. At least he doesn't have answer that consciousness coming from the brain. And but again, this bet again they invested for again he handed over the one whatever bet they bet he handed over to Chama, and again they agreed, okay, let's put another 25 years, will able to answer consciousness or something. And also I tried to, one of my colleague, he also want to bet with me about the consciousness. I said no, brain cannot give consciousness. He said brain can give, and but our bet is only for 20 years, so that whatever, if whoever wins, at least they can enjoy the money coming from the bet. So at the end, so the conclusion is, at this moment, we don't have any definite answer that brain can give rise to consciousness. But we don't, yeah, at least brain does not produce consciousness, or we don't have answer yet. So the question next, like thought, we know that my mind state is not good now, so I cannot think anymore about my research. Well, that's what I say. Whenever you say about the thought, it's always comes to the mind. This is again another problem in the neuroscience, or at least in the life science. So the question is whether neuronal circuits or in neurons firing produce a thought. I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can. And the question is like, we can, okay, we'll this also we'll try to address. And I will tell you, okay, how you can test any gene function. Either you mutate or disturb that function, so that if you don't see it, then you can say it is this gene is responsible for this particular function. Uh, for example, skin color. If particular gene is responsible, if mutation in that gene, people have vitiligo or butt color. So you can say, and you complement that gene and say, restore that function and say, okay, this gene is responsible for this. So mental illness is another thing. I told you, when you have an obsessive thought process or a strong deliberate constraint, also autonomic constraint, which I showed the picture in the beginning, then in that case you have a strong, continuous, reminiscent thought process that actually create disturbances. In other words, it's called mental illness. There are several mental illnesses. Here I mentioned the depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, obsessive compulsive disorder. If you can understand how thoughts are forming, if you can control it, and then you can treat all mental illness in the world, and then there are, I think, 40 million people are affected with mental illness. Even in the academic research, also many people affected with mental illness. If you can understand or address like how thoughts forming and what is the source, then you can solve. You can actually save many people's life. So people try to look at the brain function and neurotransmitters, neural circuits, and again, problem is, hey, like it's a correlation study. We don't have any definite answer, and you can see. I will come to this slide bit later. And in the year of 1990, USA government announced called the Project Brain. This decade is filed. They pumped a lot of billions of dollars to tackle the mental illness in the using the genetics and biological basis like neuroscience and metabolism. And then this is now 2023. It's almost 30 years. So here you can see where we are actually in understanding this mental illness and this thing. If you understand this thing, and you can also understand the thoughts and everything. So he says he is the Thomas Insel. He was a former director of National Institute of Mental Health, one of the leading institute and funding agency for understanding this mental illness and thought processes in USA. And then now in 2015 or 2016, he moved to Calico, a Google-based neuroscience, not neuroscience, aging institute, which is like similar to our institute. And he said, I spent 13 years and to pushing, like they try to investigate in the, to find biological basis and neuroscience agentic basis in the understanding mental disorders. But he said, when I look back, I realized that a while I succeeded at getting a lot of very cool papers published by cool scientists at fairly large cost. I think it's $20 billion. I don't think we moved the needle in reducing suicide, reducing hospitalization, improving recovery for the tens and millions of people who have mental illness. So we didn't actually have progressed anything in understanding the mental illness. If you understand mental illness or this thing, you can also thought. In other way around, if you understand formation of thoughts and what is thought and how they're forming, you can also address this mental illness problem. So another psychiatrist is one of the good psychiatrists. He said in the psychiatric research, and it's been 30 years, still we don't have any biological test for a psychiatric disorder, none in the pipeline. And it's like, people say, okay, increase the serotonin level or reduce the dopamine level, but that theory is panned out. It's no more like that theory. So you cannot basically, we don't have any drug or any treatment to the psychological treatments. Most of them, they give the subscription, which are more sedative and reduce the serotonin, but many people not benefit at all. So these mental illness, always people get confused with mental disorders or mental illness with a neurodegenerative disorder. For example, you have Alzheimer's disease, which is neurodegenerative disease, or Huntington's disease. You have an effect with a short-term memory and very many other cognitive functions. People lose them. And that time you think, okay, brain affected with this, for example, Huntington disease, repeat expansion in the chromosome, Huntington gene, that CAG repeats, that causes the. But in these mental neurodegenerative diseases, you can see what is the brain region get affected, and you can know what genes are involved in it, for example, and you have a definitely the biological marker. Biological marker, biomarker means, for example, if you know if you have a cancer, if you have a kidney disease, you just go to the doctor and he will just write for the creatine levels, measure the creatine levels and urea levels, and then you know that your kidney is affected, kidney dysfunction. Like that, you have a readout biomarker for cancer, what everything, all the biological diseases. When it comes to mental illness, you don't have any biomarker to diagnosis, just and we don't have any genetics. Genetic basis means we cannot say one particular gene is responsible for this mental illness. So far, we don't have it. There are large set of genome-wide associated studies went on, and linkage analysis. We couldn't find anything, and there is no proper diagnosis to diagnose. Always we have a, like you have a rule book, and in that book you ask the questionnaire, and if people score this many points, then they have a mental illness, clinical depression, whatever is, there is assessment. But we don't have any, like, and biological basis. For example, in hunting Alzheimer's or Huntington or any amyloid lateral sclerosis or something, you always see certain brain region affected, and you can by imaging or you can see these things. I work with cerebral ataxia, one of the neurodegenerative disease. Mostly now, currently, I'm working on it, and last 5 years also. So there is always a difference between the neurodegenerative disease and mental illness. So this is always confusion that sometimes you loss of memory with the neurodegenerative diseases and some cognitive functions. Then people always assume that okay, everything coming these coming from the brain. But at the same time, you don't see any difference in the brain activity or brain structure or anything when person have a mental illness.